Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to kindly ask you if you could take your seats because we are going to start. Welcome back after coffee break, and we are going to open keynote session 1. Before we start, there was a question during the coffee break whether the presentation will be available. They will. After the conference, you will receive a link through your email, so you can download all of the presentations, so you don't have to take a picture. Of course, you can if you want, but there will be presentations in your emails after the conference. Let me open keynote session 1. The topic is policy for green transition. And the first guest is joining us online. He is Deputy Director General for Climate Action at the European Commission and former Czech Minister of the Environment, Mr. Jan Dusík. Mr. Dusík, we are glad you are joining us. Thank you for that, and I hope you can hear us. We can see you, so the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to seeing and hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm just checking that everything is good with the sound, and I will start my presentation. So just bear with me for a second. Right, now it should be all good and ready to go. Right, so hello, good morning from Brussels again. Very pleased to join you. Sorry that it cannot be in person. I would always very much like to come back to my home country and to engage with the stakeholders, but we have a very busy time in Brussels these days, and I was not able to come in person. But thank you for the opportunity to offer my remarks through a video connection. So what I'm going to do in my short presentation, I will take the lens of the competence for climate, which I represent in the Commission, but I will try to relate it very much to the circularity theme, and this is something that are very complementary agendas and very interrelated. So I hope that it will be useful to see how it all connects, because after all, the whole climate agenda is a lot about making the right connections and addressing the combined challenges. Let me start with a quote from the program of the current Commission that was set out in the beginning of the year, where there's a confirmation that we will continue on the Green Deal strategy in terms of setting the 2030 and 2050 targets. It also announced that this will be complemented by the Clean Industrial Deal that will look at how we can channel the investment into infrastructure and industry, so that we are able to continue with the decarbonization and to show how these two are connected. And this is what I will also be talking about. Let me just take a picture of because when you hear the politicians or when you see the media headlines, sometimes it's a bit distorted from the opinions of the people. It is important to always recheck what the citizens want, and this is the latest series of the Eurobarometer figures, where you see that 85% of Europeans consider climate change a serious problem, and 81% of them, of the Europeans, consider that the EU should pursue its climate neutrality objective. Also, 4 out of 10 European citizens say they are directly exposed, personally exposed to environmental and climate-related risks and threats. And of course, there are many other challenges and worries that the European citizens have. But in spite of all these challenges, the climate challenge has not gone anywhere. Also, and taking the experience from the Czech Republic as well, there is the kind of simplification. If you are in favor of Green Deal or against the Green Deal, or you want to dismantle it, or you want to significantly change it. If you go into the level of detail and what people are already doing and what are the elements that are in the Green Deal, you can see that, for instance, the waste reduction and separation of waste is something that 2/3 of Europeans are already doing. Almost half of the citizens are trying to cut down on the consumption of disposable items where possible, and 1/3 is considering how to lower the energy consumption. So it is not counterintuitive to pursue the objectives of climate and environment. This is something that is very much an everyday practice for many European citizens. So what we are facing in Europe specifically, well, first of all, we see that Europe is warming twice as fast as the global average. So if we talk about the 1.5 degree ceiling for the warming of the planet, this would mean 3 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures in the EU. And we can already see that now that we are reaching that threshold of 1.5 degree. Of course, this is a long-term span, so we do not see that we have yet breached the limit of the Paris Agreement, but it is a serious issue, and it is very serious in Europe, where 3 degrees are really a strong impact. We could see that the impacts would be in terms of the increased heat and drought. And again, you can imagine the pictures from this summer to add examples of what is already happening. Climate change is something that is not in the distant future. This is something that we are already experiencing. So in terms of heat and drought, it could lead to as many as 90,000 annual deaths because of the heat waves. 65 million people in Europe live in areas where the water resources are already under stress, and that's gonna magnify. We can see the cost of flooding that happens, both in terms of the frequency of the flooding and also severity. These economic losses are increasing. In terms of economics, we can see that climate change is already costing us on the annual welfare loss 1.4% of GDP. So if you translate it to euros, it would be around 238, 240 billion euros. So a significant loss of welfare, and also increasing phenomenon of wildfires. That we can see that there is also an increase of number of people which are exposed to the dangers of wildfires. So what are we doing about it? We have set the binding targets. We have set the climate neutrality objective for 2050, and we have also set the 55% reduction compared to 1990 to be achieved by 2030. So we are in the middle of this figure. What we are seeing is that we are delivering on the commitment. We see that we have reduced by 2023 our emissions by 37%. So we are on the right path between what you see as 2020 and 2030. We have the concrete national energy climate plans of all the member states, and if we add all of them up, we can see that we are closing in on the 55% target for 2030. At the same time, the debate is ongoing these days and hours in Brussels about setting the new 2040 target. The Commission has proposed a 90% reduction, and we will be looking at how to achieve this mainly by domestic measures with some use of flexible mechanisms such as carbon removal, such as international credits. And we expect that the conclusion of this debate will be in the coming weeks. But it is important, and this is also what we increasingly hear from the companies, that they need to have the predictability. For the companies, it is more important to have a target as challenging and demanding it will be than to have uncertainty and to have a a target that keeps changing every now and then is undermining the certainty. So that's why it is important that already now we can see where we need to be by 2040, and the companies can start preparing for that milestone. So we are implementing the existing legislation, the so-called Fit for 55 package, and this is translated into the different national policies. You can see here some of the specifics. I would comment on a couple of them. One is the ETS2, the emission trading system, and the social climate fund, where basically we are targeting the buildings and road transport, both of which are important, of course, important also socially, but they are also important source of emissions. And they are combined with other measures, such as the next one in the list, which is the zero emission cars. So, if you imagine this Fit for 55, being the 55 in the center, it's a combination of measures which all need to add up, and they are mutually reinforcing one another. So, if you look at the energy target, improvements in energy efficiency and increase in the share of renewables will greatly help with addressing the current emissions in the building sector. They will help in producing electricity that can feed the new clean cars, and it is all reinforcing, and we need to see that when we all add all these elements up, that we are able to advance as we have agreed to do. So as I mentioned, the 90% emission reduction target for 2040 is something that is currently being debated. The Commission has proposed, beginning of July, the amendment of the European climate law. In a way, it is a milestone on the journey between where we agreed to be in 2030 and where we need to be by 2050 with the climate neutrality. And just to remind that when we talk about climate neutrality, that doesn't necessarily mean that we will not be consuming and burning fossil fuels at all. It means that we have to minimize the consumption and production of fossil fuels, and we have to the remaining small part of the fuels which would still be used needs to be compensated through permanent removals, be it technological or natural. So this is where we ultimately need to be, and we are running against the clock. After we have agreed the 2040 target, we will start drafting the legislative package that will accompany this climate target. So when I talked about the Fit for 55 legislation, that was the underpinning the 2030 target. The same approach will be taken for the 2040. In addition, and I was referring to the impacts of climate change, we are increasingly looking at what happens in terms of our adaptation to climate change, in terms of becoming more resilient, to be more prepared for the climate change that is already with us and that will impact lives of Europeans more and more. So we are busy with preparing a European climate adaptation plan, which will be a combination of legislation and a strategy. We will come up with this in the second half of next year. And the whole idea is that we design a common reference framework, how we can deal with adapting to climate change and how we can strengthen our resilience. We are discussing concepts such as resilience by design, the cascading, addressing the cascading risks and being prepared for the crises that sometimes are man-made, sometimes are related to natural conditions, but all in combination. This is a cascade that needs to be addressed in a synergetic way. So let me go back to the linkage with economy, and reversing the clock to the beginning of this year again, where the Commission presented the competitiveness compass, and competitiveness is at the heart of the program of this Commission. And the idea is that we need to prepare better for future technologies, for clean products, and we need to be better in delivering clean, affordable energy. We need to think about decarbonization with the lens of how to remain competitive and how to be more competitive. We need to support the transition in two main sectors. One is the energy intensive sectors such as steel, metals, or chemicals, which are essential parts of European manufacturing and also of our economic resilience. At the same time, we need to look at how we can support the clean tech solutions. And part of this, as I mentioned on the previous slide, is how do we recognize, how do we build into this the risk management and the resilience as preconditions to competitiveness? Because even if the companies would be gearing towards economic profits, they will still be impacted by climate change, and they need to be more resilient for that. So out of the compass came the Clean Industrial Deal. And here you see the key objectives of the Clean Industrial Deal. As I mentioned, focusing on the two legs of industry, one, the energy intensives, and the other is the clean tech. And very important aspect in all of this are the energy prices. So we are looking intensely at how we can bring down the energy prices. And this is also linked not just to the economy, but also to security. How dependent we are on imports of energy, how we can get out of that dependence and vulnerability. So these are the questions that we are working on solutions to improve our resilience of our energy systems and bring down the energy costs. We also want to secure the future of European manufacturing. We know that we are exposed to a big competition with global partners, and we need to see where we can be successful in European manufacturing, where we can offer good jobs, quality jobs for Europeans, and where we can thrive as an economy in an increasingly unpredictable global competition and the geoeconomic environment. Circular economy is very much in the center of attention as well, and we will have the Circular Economy Act coming up in the end of this year. You will probably also talk about it to some level of detail in your conference. What we want to do, we want to make sure that we have a market demand for secondary materials and also a single market for waste. And especially when we look on how we can make Europe more competitive and resilient, critical raw materials come into play, and we want to make sure that we can source critical raw materials as much as possible in Europe, where not in Europe, with the countries which have good partnerships with us, and that we also make best use of secondary materials. So that will help us with the economic security, that will help with reducing the costs and increasing competitiveness, and that will also obviously help with decarbonization. So this is all, again, connected together. We have the Critical Raw Materials Act, which is already in force, and the strategic projects are being implemented to lower our dependencies. We have created the Critical Raw Materials Center, which should help joint purchases and the management of strategic stockpiles. As I mentioned, the Circular Economy Act will be proposed. It's currently in the public consultation, and the objective is to allow the free movement of circular products, secondary materials, and waste, so that we have better availability and quality of the recyclates, which will also stimulate the demand for secondary materials and circular products. Because all in all, we need to make sure that we can be smarter, cleaner, and more competitive on the production side, but also that there is the consumption side, there is the demand side that complements the equation of the economy. There's also the work plan for eco-design, how we can fully roll out the requirements for eco-design. And we will be looking at beyond the country level, how do we create trans-regional circularity hubs so that we can maximize the potential of recycling. And we will be looking at the second-hand schemes in the taxation area, in the VAT directive, more specifically. So what can we do with the taxation rules to support the use of secondary materials? So closing in, again, I offer two quotes from what the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said in her State of the Union speech last week, where she clearly referred to the truly circular economy, that the expected adoption of the Circular Economy Act, and how we can source the materials directly in Europe. And the second one is about the linkage between economy and security, and how the circular production is actually supporting us in being better on economy and being stronger on security, and that we can have solutions that will help us in Europe, but which we will be also able to export further. One specific case, and I will close with this one, is the bioeconomy, which has, in our view, a big potential to become also climate positive. So not to create emissions, but also actually absorb the emissions of greenhouse gases, to keep the carbon stored in products, and to capture the biogenic emissions. And we will be looking again across the Commission for how we can strengthen the business case, how we can make the best use of the biomass, and how we can boost the recycling and resource efficiency. So the bioeconomy strategy is also something which is being worked on in parallel to the Circular Economy Act. We will be going to Berlin, and that's my last slide for the Conference of Parties of the Climate Convention, starting on the 10th of November. There, it will be an important test of how the global community is moving ahead with climate action, in spite of the US administration announcing leaving the Paris Agreement and clearly disengaging from climate action. This will be important to reinforce the multilateral commitment, to build partnerships, to also look at what's happening at the subnational level, including in the United States, and how to create also economic opportunities very much linked to our decarbonization agenda, to our circularity agenda. Because all in all, Europe, with its a little more than 6% of global emissions, even if we were able to stop them tomorrow, we would not be able to stop climate change. We need to work with all the others, and we need to maximize the potential of learning and working together. I'll stop here, and I'll be happy to engage in the discussion. And again, thank you for the invitation.
Mr. Lustig, thank you very much. I'm sure there will be questions for you later. So please stay with us online, and let me welcome here our next guest, who is head of the Circular Economy at European Environmental Bureau, Mrs. Eva Bille. It's yours, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much. We live in times of rapid change, and the world order as we know it is crumbling. You knew I was going to say that, right? I'm pretty sure I'm not the first keynote speaker to open with these words, and not even the first keynote speaker to open with these words today, because things are changing. And as written by João Vale de Almeida in his dramatically titled book, The Divorce of Nations, the first 25 years of the 21st century has turned the world upside down. In 2016, my daughter, Olivia, was born. In her short life, we've seen Brexit, Trump getting elected twice, a global pandemic, wars creeping ever nearer, genocide happening next to our region, artificial intelligence changing from sci-fi imaginations to an everyday crutch. So it's difficult to give a keynote speech without mentioning geopolitical developments, war, famine, cyber attacks, and AI taking over our resource use as well as our independent thinking. I am here representing civil society. The European Environmental Bureau brings together nearly 200 civil society organizations from more than 40 countries, together representing more than 30 million citizens. I see some of our members are here today, which is great. We and our members, and as mentioned just now, more than 85% of European citizens, according to a recent Eurobarometer survey, we continue to believe that climate change is a serious problem, and for good reason. I'm going to show this slide for the second time today. You've seen it before, but it is a reality that 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries have been crossed. Climate change, yes, but biosphere integrity, biogeochemical flows, land system change, freshwater change, they're all well beyond the planet's carrying capacity. And I do not have to speak to you about the evidence coming from science for bold climate action, but also nature restoration, zero pollution. The evidence is overwhelming, both on the need for a rapid transition, literally for our survival, but also as a prerequisite for a future-proof economy. The financial evidence is strong too, both for the return on investment, for climate action, and regarding the cost of inaction. The World Economic Forum estimates that for every $1 invested in the climate transition, we can avoid $2 to $10 in future costs. The European Environment Agency reports that a loss of ecosystem services could cost hundreds of billions of euros annually. Soil degradation alone costs Europe at least 97 billion per year. And the cost of inaction outweigh action by a factor of 6. These costs primarily burden society at large. The remediation of contaminated soil with PFAS is even more costly, potentially exceeding 2 trillion across Europe. Water purification alone is estimated at 238 billion within the EU. And industrial air pollution from the largest industries cost an estimated 2.4 to 4.3 trillion between 2012 and 2021. So clearly, the European Commission has estimated that the health benefits of banning the most harmful chemicals outweigh industry costs. So the facts are clear. But where are we now? The 2019 to 24 Commission flagship, the Green Deal, was not perfect, but it took the state of the environment and the concerns of European citizens seriously. The current Commission, as we just heard, no longer puts this promise and this concern at the heart of its agenda. Competitiveness. It's not a new word. It's been buzzing around for certainly more than 25 years. And today, Draghi is back in Brussels presenting his 1 year on from his landmark report last year. But the current college has competitiveness at the heart of its agenda, the first step. This is problematic for several reasons, and some of which were already touched upon this morning, but I will talk about 3 fallacies: definitions, deregulation, and assumptions. First fallacy in definitions. You talk about competitiveness in Brussels. You ask 20 different people to give you a definition of the word competitiveness. I guarantee you will get 20 different answers. You look outside of Brussels, and of course, this concept is confounded even further. Competitiveness as a concept, even if you look at academic literature, it says nothing about what we're competing for, who the competitors are, and what strategies will be pursued. So if you put this at the heart of your agenda with that many options and that many understandings, how can it be the answer? And for whom? Second fallacy, deregulation. There seems to be a general idea, also as mentioned this morning in Brussels, that businesses cannot cope with regulation. Legislation is holding back European companies and their ability to compete at the global scene, and that in order to compete with others around the world, we need simplification, deregulation. There are numerous examples of legislation leading to business wins, and if you read almost every business organization's position paper in Brussels, regulatory certainty, bringing investment certainty. So we have to ask ourselves, what kind of competition really benefits from fewer rules? My third fallacy on competitiveness is on assumptions, which relates to a more fundamental fallacy, the idea that competing will lead to a better economy, which will equip us to deal with the climate pollution biodiversity crisis. The latter is a problem for later, once we've resolved competitiveness first. This is not the right order, and is certainly not the only order. Competition can also lead to a race to the bottom, as we know, on workers' rights, of wages, on extraction of raw materials. Then who's better off? So what's happening right now? The omnibuses, I had to go there. We just submitted our responses to a consultation on the 6th so-called omnibus proposal since February, the environmental omnibus. An omnibus is, as a principle, a very good principle. It amends several laws at the same time, which is often procedural, like we had a few years ago, an omnibus on comitology procedures, looking at procedural tweaks across many laws at the same time. But the fact that we've had 6 since February is a little bit out of pace with reality. And also the fact that certainly the first on CSRD, CSDDD, and taxonomy is not just touching on procedural tweaks, it's touching on the scope, and it's touching on the safeguards at the heart of the legislation. While there was at least consultation for this one, the sixth one, the process was short. It happened over the summer, and it's so broad that it's possible to cherry pick from the list of responses and call it consultation. Assessing the impact of these initiatives is absolutely essential to avoid non-experts with the best intentions simplifying away the base protections. It's like asking some of the loudest football players in a match to decide which rules would make it easier for them without assessing the impact it would have on the quality of the game, on the other players, or general outcomes. Getting rid of red cards, for example, would be great for some players, but the overall game is unlikely to be better or more fair as a result. In her State of the Union, which I am now the third person to quote today, von der Leyen announced savings of 8 billion from omnibuses. But where are these savings coming from? She was rather unspecific on that. Is it coming from environmental safeguards? Is it coming from paperwork? Health standards? Because if it comes at the cost of clean air, healthy food, climate stability, that's not simplification, that's subtraction. Or simplification. I like that one. The Commission's own review shows that failing to implement EU environmental laws costs society 180 billion a year. And that's just implementing the laws that we have now. If we start deregulating or dismantling those laws, it could be an astronomical figure, much higher than that. It's not just a problem for nature, it's also a problem for business. Front runners who invested will not reap the rewards if legislation is delayed or the certainty that they so demand is denied. No one wants environmental and health safeguards to be put into question, but doing everything so quickly absolutely will dig deep holes into our fundamental societal safeguards. From the past mandate, or is it still very much alive? Man on the moon moment, it was proposed as. And I'm going to share a third quote from the State of the Union speech. She said, "We are firmly on track to achieve our 2030 target to cut emissions by at least 55%. This is the power of the European Green Deal, and we must stay the course on our climate and environmental goals." These are great words. But looking across policy areas, there are definitely some areas that are more alive than others. Has always been to advocate for policies that lead to resource use reduction and that lead to a life well lived within planetary boundaries. Of course, for that we follow the well-known hierarchy of action. The first pillar, as also mentioned by Dr. Potocznik this morning, being refuse, rethink, reduce, then reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, repurpose, and only towards the end looking at recycling and recovery. Now, this is a very informed audience here, but by a show of hands, how many of you have repaired something within the last year? That is almost half. That's excellent news. But it's not where policy is going at the moment. Circular economy, as we just saw, remains high on the agenda in name, but there is very little policy in the upper trio, and commitments to living well within planetary boundaries, resource use reduction frameworks and targets are nowhere to be seen. I'm sharing with you here a beautiful graph of the circular materials use rate. When Mr. Potocznik left as Environment Commissioner in 2014, we were just shy of 12% circular materials use rate. We are still just shy of 12% circular materials use rate. The target to go from 12 to 24% was mentioned in the 2020 Circular Economy Action Plan. It was reaffirmed in the Clean Industrial Deal in February. But we need to go all in if we want this to materialize, and we cannot just focus on energy, recycling, and a secondary market for raw materials. It will not be enough. The latest Circular Economy Action Plan, you had a good run-through of what that did earlier today, so I will not go into details, but it did look at ambitions to enable the upper quadrant actions like reuse or repair through the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation, for the Right to Repair directive, and more transparent communication to consumers in the Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition Directive. Even if we don't get a Green Claims Directive, there are still some important milestones that were reached in the Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition Directive. And notable progress was made to the Waste Framework Directive. Just last week, we had a final vote in the Parliament that added targets for food waste and that established extended producer responsibility schemes for textiles. So there is action, and there was action also in the most lobbied file in this mandate, the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, to move higher up the waste hierarchy for packaging. All of these pieces of legislation were adopted or amended through the Green Deal, and if implemented well, they could bring positive changes that move us further up the hierarchy of action. But it's not an automatic on switch. And the Circular Economy Act consultation closes on the 6th of November this year. I hope all of you will submit responses to this consultation as well to make a strong call for action that focuses not on secondary materials, not just on creating a market that can supply our demand for ever rising demand for materials, but to actually take it seriously and make it a transition to a circular economy where the entire economy is circular and not just an appendage to our existing linear extractive systems. So for now, even if it's no longer buzzword du jour, many of the actions birthed by the Green Deal are still alive. Some of the others, like sustainable food systems, farm to fork, have lost their pulse or been swallowed by the simplification agenda. Now, to reconcile this dire state of the planet with the commitments agreed on between all parties and stakeholders, geopolitical reality, which is not new, but as I mentioned, has arguably intensified, participation in decision-making processes has never been more important. And this relates to the simplification agenda. The objectives of making things simple will not be met if those that need most, like small businesses or citizens or communities, are not heard. Rushing things through without consultation is counter to the agenda that the Commission claims to follow. This also relates to citizen mobilization and participation. You've also seen this slide before. I'm happy that other people shared this too. But something that is fundamental for a well-functioning society. If civil society does not have the resources to advocate for our behalf, there will be no counterpoint to heavyweight industries and their status quo. The EEB's role, among others, is to share evidence and citizen perspectives on the importance of addressing the triple planetary crisis, climate, pollution, and nature, communicate about what citizens want, arguing what policies need to improve to get more buy-in, sharing evidence of what works and who can benefit, how, from the green transition, looking at science-based solutions to the crisis and engaging different stakeholders in all parts of society. And we fight disinformation and the weakening of facts and evidence in decision-making. Rules exist to protect people and the planet, and to ensure fair competition and long-term business. As climate and social crises intensify, weakening these protections is not only short-sighted, but also poses significant risks. So we need strong legislation. We need proper consultation, and we need to put people and planetary boundaries first. On that, I'm very aligned with Dr. Potocznik from this point. Yes, we live in times of rapid change. Yes, the world order feels like it's crumbling, but that makes it even more important to hold on to what protects us. Resilience, safeguards, long-term thinking, and long-term sustainability. Competitiveness may be the slogan of today, but the Green Deal and the protection of our planet is the promise of tomorrow. To quote the book Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robertson, "The dead hand of the past clutches us by way of living people who are too frightened to accept change." In 2050, when Olivia, my daughter, will be 34 years old, I hope she will have clean air, clean water, electricity, and that she'll not be suffering the consequences of her parents and grandparents throwing away her life for short-term economic gain. The choice is ours, on behalf of all the generations that come after us. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope Mr. Dusik is still with us. Yes, I can see him. I hope you can hear us. And there is a time for your questions from the audience or via Zoom. So if we have a question, please raise your hand and you can discuss with our guests. If we have no questions yet, I'm sure there will be later. Maybe Mrs. Bille, I would like to ask you, because you mentioned a lot of crises which we focus in last 9-10 years, as you mentioned your daughter. So I would be interested if, or would you say, how can current geopolitical pressures reflected European climate and environmental policy making?
How can it be reflected in,
Yes.
better reflected in European
Yes.
policy making? I think it is quite simple, and I really like the graph that we were shown this morning about integrating planetary boundaries, decoupling growth from resource use, and focusing on prosperity, well-being, and measuring our worth in metrics that relate to our well-being rather than in just purely GDP financial terms.
Thank you. Mr. Ducey, question for you. How has the Commission's approach to the circular economy changed between the first and the second Ursula von der Leyen's commissions? Do you see the difference?
Well, thank you. As I said, this is very much work in progress, and the consultation is ongoing. And I would too encourage everyone to contribute. But in essence, what I tried to depict in my presentation is that the solution needs to be holistic. I was showing the football pitch example. I think that it's important that we do not only run towards the same goal, but we have a strategy, and the strategy needs to take into consideration where we have our strengths, where our partners or competitors are. I think that it is quite clear where some of the competitors are that we are trying to position ourselves, and then see how we can best build on our strength, how we can maximize our resilience, and that includes very much circularity, but also seeing it in economic terms and in the global competition with imports of goods and raw materials. That I would say is one important change. Second, in relation to simplification versus deregulation, I think it is important to distinguish in between the two, and it is also important to distinguish that not everything that is in that space is European regulation. There is also this needs to go into thinking at the national level. What are the gold plating? What are the barriers to maximizing the potential of what we can do together as Europe? So thinking about how we can use the Europe of 27 member states and potentially more in the near future, in being stronger in capitalizing on our respective capacities and strengths, and building an ecosystem that will not necessarily be diminishing our environmental and climate efforts. On the contrary, it can strengthen them, and it can provide the fabric for the economy, and also for the jobs and social well-being that we need in Europe.
Thank you. Do we have any? Yeah, we have two questions, gentlemen, over there, and then in the second row. So please just wait for them. And another two questions. Sorry. Okay, so let's take it from the right side of the audience. Then we have another questions.
Thank you both for very interesting and inspiring presentations. I'm Göran Finnveden from KTH in Stockholm. I have a sort of general question to both of you. It would be interesting to hear your comment on the other one's presentation, but then I have also a specific question to Jan Dusik. You had a slide about the impacts if we are not mitigating climate change, and where you said that the temperature increase would be 3 degrees, but it will not stop at 3 degrees. It will continue to increase as long as we have emissions of carbon dioxide. We will continue to have an increase of temperature. And also the impacts of this will be much larger. The economic impacts will be much larger. So I would like you to comment on that slide. Why did you choose those numbers? What are the background, and why are you sort of underestimating the impacts of climate change? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dusik, would you mind to start?
Sure. I think I commented a little bit on Eva's presentation, but happy to elaborate further if needed. I believe that we need to continue delivering on the Green Deal agenda in combination with delivering on the other parts of the political agenda. So we need to be smart, strategic, and we should not abandon our targets. And this is not, I mean, when we talk to our partners, they say, well, we are fine with the targets, but we need to be smart about how we can achieve those targets. And there is room for improvement. Of course, we need to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and to make sure that we also have the data, that we understand what's going on, that we also empower the investors to make choices where they invest their money, and the insurers to make sure that they offer the products which make sense from the climate resilience perspective. That gets me to the second question, more specifically. When I referred to 3 degrees, this is based on the 1.5 degrees. So if the globe warms by 1.5 degrees, then Europe commits to warming by 3 degrees. And I agree with you that this is not the stop point. This is, at the moment, it is the starting point of projecting how Europe will be at least 3 degrees warmer, because that's where we are at the moment. And then we have solutions, and then we have ways to basically make investments seen as investments rather than costs into adaptation, into more resilience that will reduce the impacts of climate change. And of course, if you have a fire, then the first thing you need to think, okay, what do I do to stop the source of the fire? And stopping the source of the fire means reducing the emissions as quickly as possible, and reducing them not just in Europe but also in the rest of the world. So it's a combined challenge to cope with the reducing of the emissions and already preparing for the climate change, which is already with us and which will have more and more consequences. But I think that also helps the political narrative, the political debate, that one without the other doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to reduce emissions and not to do anything about the impact. And it also doesn't make sense to just deal with the impact and to build dikes and reinforcements and air conditioning or whatever, and then ignore that we still have the same problem. And again, this is not a task just for Europe. Europe is leading. There's many others who are taking ambitious action. We need them to continue to be more ambitious, and we need to convince also those who have not yet taken action to walk with us, because, as I said, 6 and a bit more % of emissions is not sufficient to tackle. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Billa.
Thank you. Just a very quick comment on Mr. Dusik's presentation, which I think was not unexpected. It focused on climate. It outlined a lot of the Green Deal pieces of legislation that are still being finalized, so that are currently in the implementation phase. And he mentioned also the competitiveness compass and the clean industrial deal, which in their rhetoric also stay on target or stay on course. I think the problem is not so much in what he said or what is written in those already existing laws. The problem is more in what is happening behind the scenes, and potentially also outside of Mr. Dusik's control, in the very rapid omnibus legislations that are being put out there without consultation, I think even of Commission services. So it's not, I would say it is a very centralized agenda, and it's very it is very concerning that it is happening actually without regard for the work that is ongoing in the Commission services.
Thank you. Let's take a question from the back, and then gentlemen in the second row.
Yeah, thank you for those inspiring talks, very on point. I'm Melanie Jäger-Erben from Brandenburg University of Technology in Germany. And yeah, this particular to Eva, but maybe to both of you, I was also struggling a lot with this notion of competitiveness and competition as the dogma and mantra and the only way to go, obviously, it seems at least. And I mean, what I'm wondering is really that it's so anti-human in a way. I mean, of course, competition has always had its place in human evolution, cultural evolution, but the most part why we progressed as humans and thrived as humans was taking care of each other, being able to take care of each other, being able to collaborate, to share comments, to build relationships and so on. And I always wonder, how can we get this shift in narratives too, to concentrate really on what makes us human and what makes us really thrive. And I don't know how you see the chances of kind of having counter narratives that highlight really what is the point, in particular in times of crisis, when, I mean, everybody is afraid of all the crisis. Competition is, I mean, it can spark creativity, but it mostly sparks fear among people to lose. And I think this is like the worst thing to do in times of crisis, to like focus on competition. I don't know, what you think about it, or what are your solutions?
Thank you. No, and I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's the right narrative. And I think if you look at some of the academic literature around competitiveness, it doesn't do anything. It just is. Plants compete for oxygen. I mean, competition exists, but it's not a goal. It cannot be a goal in itself. And I would be happy to share with you, at the start of this mandate, we developed a European Pact for the Future in collaboration with a lot of stakeholders, which outlines a different way and a different path that indeed balances the human needs and the very human condition now, and also certainly the loss of jobs and the economic situation. There's a very real need for a better economy for many people, but we need to balance that with having a planet that they can live on also tomorrow and also in 2050. So I agree with you, a narrative shift is needed. We need to be more human, and we're trying to put some of those counter narratives out there. But it is not, I think, certainly in the Brussels bubble at the moment, it is not an easy task. But I'm very happy to see so much engagement from you today, and I also hope that we will have more and more voices, like from this mobilization we just did around the Environment Omnibus, but hopefully also around the Circular Economy Act and the future development of this Commission agenda, so that we bring more voices to the table to argue this point. I think it's very important.
Thank you. Mr. Ducey, would you like to add something?
Yeah, just very briefly, and I don't disagree with Eva here that it is a daunting task, and I don't know how many times per day we are repeating that we are staying the course on what we have committed, and we are trying to connect that course with the other challenges. And we didn't mention the fact that we have war happening in Europe and directly impacting the European Union, and of course this is with the 5% of spending and the risks and anxiety that it brings. This is an additional challenge, and we are also trying to make the link there. So the approach that we are taking is not to abandon the targets, and I agree with you that one thing may be climate targets, the other may be, let's say, other environmental topics or good governance. There's definitely improvements that could be done on that side, or we should go to more systematic good governance work. But we need to keep making those connections and saying it is not about a choice that either we protect the environment and climate, or we will have jobs, or we will have economic benefits. In essence, this is not new. This is coming to the whole equilibrium of sustainable development, and again, as many definitions of sustainable development. But all in all, this is living within the boundaries and being able to combine our respect for the planet, our well-being, our sustainable economic opportunities. It is combinable. I think that we can see a growing number of examples where this can deliver. But of course, we can also see that there is countercurrents and there is pushbacks from those who would like to stay in the old fossil economy, and that who have the economic interests to push back. So it is a balancing act.
Thank you. Gentleman in the second row.
Yes, thank you. Hi again. I'm still Jacob Quist, Delft University of Technology. I would like to thank Melanie for bringing up this the issue of topic of collaboration, cooperation, because even in addition to what you are answering here, say most progress and achievement in say human prosperity over the last decade or last is based on cooperation and collaboration, and you also see it's also the cornerstone of communities and social cohesion. But that was not what I wanted to ask about. Actually, I wanted to get back to the question or build on the question that I asked to Janusz Potocnik, and it was that he, emphasized to move towards circular material targets. That's quite an abstract, will work in policy. But I would like to ask both of you that in addition to what you have said, what is the feasibility and how could we move towards to achieving that, for instance, in the European Union, to make somewhere a beginning? And I also would like to ask you to reflect on how to deal with that with the consumption side or with the civil society side, because I like the answer, I like the discussion, but I still think that that was a bit easy that when you have circularity targets, that the consumption side or that the civil society side, that it will go automatically. There might be that much more is needed. So if you could shed your light on that, I would be very happy with that.
Thank you. Mrs. Bella.
Thank you. No, thank you for asking this question again. And I think Dr. Potocnik gave a very good answer, but I'll try to add our flavor to it. I think we agree that targets would be good. Targets is always, it sets a North Star. But I think one other piece that we didn't touch on, I think it relates to your point of thinking more holistically and thinking also not in here's environment legislation, here's climate legislation, here's consumer legislation. There is important consumer legislation coming out, for example, in the Digital Fairness Act, which will relate more to the kinds of contents that we're exposed to and the types of needs that are artificially created when we are browsing on social media and we suddenly feel like we need a new hairbrush or a new vacuum cleaner. All of this advertising space and all of these demands that are being created. I would agree that I don't want to put the educational burden on the consumer, but I do want to put the safeguards in what can be sold on the European market. Now I'm thinking online marketplaces and the extreme volume of low quality products that are coming in from third countries that are so high in volume and so low in quality that it's almost impossible for enforcement authorities to deal with it. I want to handle that through not blaming the consumer and pointing the finger, but through putting safeguards on what can be sold and responsibility on the online marketplaces on what is placed on the EU market. So that is one additional avenue that we can go to. I think, of course, education is important, but again, we should educate the producers and we should make sure that eco-design legislation is implemented properly. We should make sure that the cars, right now there was just a vote in the parliament and trilogues are starting on vehicle design and end-of-life vehicles. Cars should be designed so that they can be reused, hopefully, for as long as possible. They shouldn't also be glued together in a way that as long as we can't update the software, we have to scrap an entire car. So let's implement the eco-design requirements. Let's implement eco-design across a much wider range of product groups than what's currently planned. Let's look at design, let's look at how we design products, but then let's also look at some of the drivers of overconsumption and trying to figure out how we can change that and bring our consumption down in line with planetary boundaries as well.
Thank you, Mr. Dusik.
Yeah, I very much agree here, and I think that we need to see that whole metric, how we measure the quality of life, is not necessarily measured by the increasing GDP. So it's a broader discussion. The transition to electromobility does not necessarily mean that everyone will get a new car and will be able to drive unlimited amount of kilometers with it. So it is about consumption choices. It is about what the consumers want and how they are making those responsible choices. I spoke about the competitiveness of European production with the rest of the world, but sometimes, and increasingly so, it is the rest of the world which is also challenging us and raising the bar. You can see that sometimes we can see that the production in other parts of the world can actually be equally clean or cleaner in some cases than what we are able to do in Europe. So I would nuance here the support to European production on the condition or with the condition that it achieves the best environmental and climate performance and that reacts to the competition on those grounds also with the rest of the world.
Thank you. Gentleman in the third row has a question, and in the third row, and then you. Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Vladislav Smrš from Czech Republic. I'm here from Prague and Ostrava. And my question, because Eva was a little bit provocative, so let me be even more provocative. So I think simplification and deregulation is really a must. Because there are a lot of companies who suffocated because of this because of the overregulation and too complicated system. And there are more and more sharks in the pool that just cheating because they can do so. Enforcement authorities, either national or European, are simply not able to force them to follow the rules. So the fair one who suffocate just deciding more and more to escape from the Europe because there's no more room for them, because there's no enforcement of the law. So isn't it the way to simplify to deregulate and make the life easier, livable, but still maintain the right direction? And it's the first, yes or no, or what do you think about it question? And the second, how would you do it to meet the goals? Because adding more and more regulation and being more and more tough, I think it's not a way forward.
Thank you. Mr. Dusik, would you mind to start answering these questions?
Yeah, sure. I can start, and I think that I would distinguish between deregulating and simplifying. And I think I said that simplification in principle is a reasonable activity as long as it doesn't undermine the targets, and as long as it delivers the purpose of achieving the targets in the most effective way. I hear what Vladislav mentioned just now, but quite often we see the cries from the industry that they will not be able to cope with the requirements and that they are too harsh. And then we see that they are able to cope. They have fulfilled these. And it is important what was mentioned in the earlier discussion that Europe is not only about thriving businesses. It's about a combination of the European way of living, where it is about having decent jobs, having economic prosperity, but also living in a healthy environment. So all in all, it needs to come in balance, and I think this is also something that, at least from DG Klima perspective, is the lens where we see the whole simplification or better regulation agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Billa.
Thank you. I love a good provocative question. I think I agree with you completely that enforcement is incredibly important, and we need better enforcement, and we need to make sure that the rules are followed also by producers outside of the EU. I think it's the key problem, and it's something we need to invest more in. But to your other question on don't we need simplification? There are things we can simplify, of course, but I think the fact that it's happening so quickly, it avoids consultation of some of the smaller players. There's no way that all of the small businesses that we're talking about woke up in the middle of August and submitted their responses to the consultation on the Environment Omnibus. It's just not possible. But who did? Well, the car industry did, the chemicals industry did. The big players are, of course, there to have their voices heard, but there's not enough time to get input from the smaller businesses and from the actors that we're actually trying to potentially simplify for. And yes, we can separate simplification from deregulation, although it is a bit mixed up at the moment in Euro bubble terminology. But I think on your point of deregulation, this is not how we win. There is no, if we are talking about winning, there is no situation where a competition against China on price is a competition that will benefit Europe in any way. So we need to start from, it will be a race to the bottom. It will be a race to the bottom in terms of well-being and in terms of all of the worker protections that we've built. That's not what we want. That's not the kind of life we want. And I think we need to have, if we need a competition at all, this is a different question that was raised in the beginning. Don't we need collaboration? Don't we need to be more human? Absolutely. But if we need a competition, it cannot be on who makes it the fastest or the cheapest.
Thank you. Gentleman in the fifth row wanted to ask, and then we have time for brief last questions. Or maybe it's going to be last question. So the floor is yours.
Arnold Lagendijk, Radboud University, the Netherlands. I have a direct follow-up question. We see how important small businesses are, both in innovation, but also directing the way for good regulation. But they meet the forces of big businesses with invested interest, fossils, with strong lobby and very good in power play. So how do we strengthen the role of small businesses?
Thank you. Mrs. Billa?
That's a good question. And I think it's important in terms of certainly looking from a policy perspective. I think that's why it's important to take the time to really assess the impact of initiatives and to gather the voices of the small businesses and the circular businesses and the businesses that strive for a better society, the new business models, the new ways of doing things that, yes, there might be job losses in the fossil fuels industry, but there might be job gains in some of those smaller businesses. And if those businesses are heard and if those businesses can come together and present their points of view, then I think that will make for better policy.
Thank you, Mr. Dusik.
Yes, I would use one example, and that connects to what we have discussed earlier: simplification. So one part of the first omnibus was the simplification of the CBAM regulation, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, where we basically looked at the thresholds of the imports of the goods to the European Union, and we had an analysis based on the initial phase of CBAM, which showed that basically if we reduce the obligations, the reporting and the payment of CBAM for 90% of the smallest companies, we can still maintain targeting 99%, over 99% of emissions. And we did it. This is a concrete way of simplifying the legislation, which can help the SMEs in particular. And these SMEs are under the radar of the Commission in a number of ways. And obviously the SMEs also have a smaller voice than the big industries in terms of expressing their opinions. So it is important to find ways to listen and to see what specific solutions we can have to support the fabric of the SMEs. Thanks.
Many thanks to both of you for your presentations and for your answers. Our time is up, unfortunately, but it was very interesting. So thank you, Mr. Jan Dusik and Mrs. Eva Bille. Thank you both. And thank you for your questions. Now we are going to have a short lunch break, and after that we will continue with the 7 parallel sessions at 2 p.m. So enjoy the lunch, and the program continues at 2 p.m. with parallel sessions. Thank you.